mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Well, it's just a show. Blinded by the light.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger wells inside me till I'm almost overcome. I wouldn't have the moon out of the sky and drop the sun. When I
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8631.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I am Clay Douglas. And, let me see. Yes, today's Friday. So I've got Russell Pappalardo, the mighty Phoenix, joining me today. Hello, Russell. How are you?
Morning, Clay. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing pretty good. We still haven't got the Truth Radio crap cleaned up. And so we'll see if they get it cleaned up by Monday. So hopefully, I'd hate to lose Truth Radio after being on it for 20 years. But we got new people that took over. And we don't know, obviously, they don't know that I mean what I say, when I don't want mood music in the middle of my interview, when I don't want this 20-year-old introduction playing while my current introduction is playing on the show. But hopefully they'll get it figured out and understand that I mean what I say. So much for that rant. And but you're coming in pretty good here. This is I've got a subject for our conversation today, but it's really something that I've been asking about for a while. I said, who won the Cold War? That was what I had for our subject to talk about. But in reality, I don't even believe there was a Cold War. I believe it was a scam so the Jewish Zionist masters could sell more atomic weapons. And did you know that, between the United States and Russia, we've got thousands of nuclear weapons, and toss in Israel in there, they've got their own. 8 of those nuclear weapons used could wipe out civilization as we know it. So why do we have them? The mutually assured destruction. Now that seems to be a Zionist concept, and I want to. When I talk about the Jews, I've got to tell you, I think we have, every time we even use the term Jew, we're playing into their hands, because they ain't Jews. And Jesus warned you about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. So if we even call them a Jew, we're talking about these Zionists that came from Khazaria, and I've told people they hide behind the Jewish people. Now, the Jewish people have been around for a few thousand years. Not all of them are bad. And I've got on my Facebook page, I've got a young lady there that talks about her Jewish heritage from Brooklyn. And I've been to Brooklyn. No dangerous people there. No Jews there looking to kill 60 million white Christians like Stalin did, and there we go. That wasn't even Stalin wasn't even a Jew. But the Soviet Union was created by the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolshevik Revolution, and I've just over this last week I've done a pretty good historical documents on the Bolshevik Revolution. There's where our problem lies. And actually our problem lies in the fact that, as Solzhenitsyn put it, these Bolsheviks hate Russians. They're not Russians, and they hate Russians. Well, these neocons, or whoever these are, I call them the Khazarian Mafia. The Khazarian Mafia, they hate Christians. They hate you and I. They hate the little old lady down the street. They want our money, and they want our control over our lives. They want they have really instituted a new form of slavery. Are you there?
I am always here. I am all.
Okay, I thought I'd get you too excited and you had a heart attack or something.
No, that's impossible. Clay, let's cut to the chase here.
Now you need to clear up. Hold it. Your microphone is not very clear. You need a different microphone.
Can you hear me better now?
No, it's still.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, I can hear you better there. That's better. Okay.
Okay. First of all, let's cut to the chase. There's an old cliche, there's good and bad in all kinds. Unfortunately, most of the Jews, including the Jews in Brooklyn, because I have done mucho business with them in Brooklyn, most of them are afraid to speak out, although they don't want any part of the Zionist agenda, for fear of the Jews who are not really Jews, as you put it so aptly. They will not speak out because they will be ostracized, their businesses will be avoided, and the shekels that they count will drop, and they'll finish counting the shekels within about 30 seconds. This is the way it is. The Zionists are in full control, not only of the Hasidic and the other communities in Brooklyn and in all the major cities, but of your Congress through AIPAC or the Israeli lobby. They pick and choose who you're allowed to vote for, and they pick and choose who is allowed to represent you. There are no elections in the United States of America, only selections by the Israeli lobby, who is controlled by the B'nai B'rith Freemasonic Lodge. And of course, the lodge is controlled by the House of Rothschild, colloquially known as the Synagogue of Satan. Unless Jews start speaking out, as Henry Ford put it, he has to condemn them all, with the exception of those who speak out. This nonsense, so what I don't know won't hurt me. I don't think that way. Well, you know what? Evil triumphs when good men and women say or do nothing. It's time for the Jews, the good Jews, and there are many of them, I know, to stand up, rise up, and speak out about the cancer, the leprosy of Zionism. Who is under total control of a group of individuals from a Turco-Finnish Mongoloid race from the steppes of Eastern Europe that J.R.R. Tolkien called the shadow from the east. These are the Ashkenazi Jews. They are the descendants of Cain and Eve. If you read your Bible correctly, you would see when Eve had Cain, she didn't shout out, I got a man from Cain. She said, I got a man from the Lord. She got a man from Samuel, a watcher. And if you don't know what a watcher is, Google it. The fact remains, what we're going to talk about here, because the reason that they don't speak out is, in the main, fear.
I just want to keep my
Fear,
head.
folks,
I just want to keep my head below the radar. I just don't want to call attention to myself.
Exactly. Fear is the forerunner of failure. As I always say, fear knocked at the door. I opened it, there was no one there. And those rare times when there is something there, I open up a can of passionate whoop-ass, which I am very adroit and capable of doing. Folks, the very word fear is comprised of 4 letters. F for false, E for evidence, A for appearing, and I stress the word appearing, and R for real. Fear is naught but false evidence appearing real. Anxiety must be abandoned. The greatest disappointments we encounter in this life, and in all lives, in all incarnations, because we do reincarnate, are those which never actually occur. Like I always said, if you worry about something happening, and it happens, you upset yourself twice. If it doesn't happen, you upset yourself for nothing. That's why Jesus, the Gnostic master and Lord of the Magi, said, worry not about tomorrow. Tomorrow will have worries of its own.
You know,
You gotta live each day at
tell
a time. You have to live your life, hold on, Clay, as if you were a link, one link on a link chain. If you concentrate on the links behind you, you won't progress. You'll be stuck. You'll get nowhere. And if you concentrate on the links ahead of you and worry about them or have anxiety about them, it's foolish, because they might never occur. You might not even be here. Go ahead, Clay.
My mother was a worrier. My father left when I was very young. I never knew him. And my mother was a worrier, but I used to tell her, Mom, if you can do something about something, just do it, don't worry about it. If you can't do anything about it, then it doesn't do you any good to worry about it.
Very well, but if there is something that one can do about the apprehension or the anxiety or the tenseness or the fear, you must act. Action, and folks, remember these words, action cures fear. As far as praying will get you nowhere. A, if you pray to the wrong God, who is Yahweh or Jehovah, because he is nothing more than the moon god's sin of the Sumerians, Ialdabaoth, or the demiurge of the Greeks. He is an archon, as you could read in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which your pastor in your false redeemer religions don't tell you to read. They tell you to read the Bible and only the parts that they tell you to read. Folks, you got to wake up. You've been had, taken, hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led astray. Run amok, mesmerized, and mind-fucked. You are the Savior that you have been looking for. No one is coming down here from the heavens to save you. And I'll tell you this, folks, again, for the second reason your prayers don't work is because you don't take action. Heaven never helped a man or woman who didn't act. So I say unto you, be bold, and mighty forces will come to your aid.
Well, you might be opposed by mighty forces. You know, when I saw what happened at Waco with the 17 little children are being slaughtered, burnt, killed, their families along with them, I couldn't sit back and watch something like that happen again without trying to do something. And I did. I started these militias. Yes, sir.
Clay, on Prison Planet Earth, you will always be opposed by mighty forces. However, one has to keep on pushing. One has to keep on keeping on. You have to do the thing you ought to do at the time you ought to do it. You can't quit, because quitters never win and winners never quit. You know, Clay, I've molded my life since 1970 on a poem which I'm going to recite now. I've done it before, but I think it's very important for the folks out there to understand that we are, and I understand that we are fighting an all uphill battle. So let me tell you the poem. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, and the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us oft times learns, and many a fella has turned about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Often the goal is nearer then, it seems to the faint and faltering man. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup, and he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worst that you mustn't quit.
Very good. Very nice.
Thank you, Clay. You know, I go back to, and I've shown this plaque on videos. In 1984, at the Martial Arts Institute in North Massapequa on North Broadway, it was ran by the Arango brothers, Tony and Michael. They would have contests every year for sit-ups, and no one did more than 2,000 sit-ups, which is quite a bit. And I'm talking about real sit-ups, not baby crunches. You had to lay on the floor with your knees bent, and nobody holds your knees, and one of the brothers would watch you doing it. And I set my mind to do 4,000. It took me 3 hours, and I got a plaque for 4,000 sit-ups. And I thought I had first place. Thought. But my friend Jerry Gladstone, who used to play for the Seattle Pilots, this guy had a bad shoulder. I've seen this guy with the bad shoulder bench press 350 pounds, 30 reps. He was so bad. Now, by the way, let's give credit to the Jews. You want to give credit to the Jews? He happened to be Jewish. He was no Zionist. This guy was so tough. He won the Empire States tournament for martial arts of all different styles 3 to 5 years in a row. And I can tell you this, I used to spar with him quite often. And I'll tell you this, every time I did, I got a bruising. Because even blocking Jerry's punches and kicks, the body took a tremendous beating. But you know what? The point is, Jerry came in, and he did 4,001 sit-ups, so I had second place. Was I happy about it? Yeah, no big deal. I got the plaque, second place, which I was very satisfied with. And I still got it. It's right in my office. When I do my videos, it's right in the back. But you got to keep on keeping on. Was it easy? No way. But I pace myself with the music. That's how you got to do. That's why I post a lot of music. Music is uplifting. It is the melody of the soul. The soul as it should be. Like I said, you got to keep on keeping on. You got to keep on pushing. And you got to abrogate or relinquish all fears. That's the key, because fear truly is the forerunner of failure.
Well, that
Andrew
is
Jackson at
exactly.
the Battle of 18.
That is exactly what
What?
they want. They want you to be afraid. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. And that just takes us back for a moment to this whole thing. The Cold War, I believe, was a scam. That was another false flag attack. The Russian people were never our enemy. Marx and Lenin might have been. Stalin might have been. But our
Oh, they
president...
definitely were our enemy, but the Russian people were not. The Russian people never revolted. It was a Bolshevik Jewish revolution. The Ashkenazi Jews first revolted in 1905. It failed, and then in 1917 it succeeded. And Winston Churchill even wrote in the London Times that the Jewish people, quote, verbatim, have the Russian people by the hair of their heads and won't let go. And yet, you will never hear of this in the school systems that indoctrinate you and have brainwashed you and now your kids and jail them for 6 to 8 hours a day. Yeah, the public school system, the system of pubic indoctrination. You'll never hear of it because the Zionist Jews own the school system as they do the media. The media in the United States is owned by 7 corporations, 6 of which are overtly Jewish. The other one is owned by Rupert Murdoch, who happens to be a clandestine Jew and a staunch Zionist. Folks, you really got to wake up. This problem has to be addressed. If you want to identify a cancer and then you want to treat it, you have to identify what is this cancer? What is this leprosy that's affecting the body of humanity? And these Ashkenazi Jews, this Turco-Finnish Mongoloid race from the south of Eastern Europe, the descendants of Cain, are the world's foremost problem. You see, folks, when you go back to that so-called Garden of Eden, which was actually a laboratory in Edenland, you could see a takeoff of it in the book, The Island of Dr. Moreau. When Cain had, when Cain was born, Cain had descendants too, which eventually led to the characters called Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The daughter of Japheth was a woman by the name of Gomar. Her son was Ashkenaz. That's where you get the Ashkenazi Jews. The name. You could read this in a genealogy of Japheth, and then you'll see that they were the Gentiles, not Semitic. They had no relation to the shit, and they settled along the isles and became the peoples of the sea. They were defeated. They were bankers. They were scoundrels. They were rogue villains and insidious bastards, to be honest with you. They were as heinous could be. And they were defeated at the Battle of Megiddo by Egyptian archers approximately 1500 BC, and then traveled on across the Caucasus Mountains through the steppes of Eastern Europe, where they settled and formed a nation called Khazaria, which was taken out of the history books. You could Google it, Google Khazaria, go to YouTube and say, and put in Khazaria. And that's why Clay uses the name the Khazarian Conspiracy.
Khazarian Mafia. I call it the Khazarian Mafia.
They were also,
they
were also related to They were related to Attila the Hun. They were descendants of the Burghers and the Magars who got to the steppes first. And what they did was wage war. But unfortunately, war was always waged on them because they were in the middle of 2 warring empires. The Muslim Empire, another phony Redeemer religion, not as bad as Judaism or Judeo-Christianity, because Judeo-Christianity is in the teachings of Jesus and totally turned them upside down. But they needed protection, so they had to join one of these 2 groups. But they made a decision. They didn't join either. They converted to Talmudism, which was what Judaism was called. Originally, it was called, in the old days, Torah Yahwehism or Habaruism or Hebrewism. The Habaru were known as the people from across the water. Sagaz Habaru. Sagaz means cutthroat. So they were known as the cutthroats from across the water in ancient times.
All right, now
They
hold on,
formed
Judge. Let's just stop for a second.
Wait,
here.
hold on, Clay. I don't want to lose it.
We've heard all of this, and it's time to look in a different direction here, Russell, I believe. You know, we've got my friend...
And what direction might that be?
Well, my friend Jake Wade, he started Timothy Bible College, started it as the Little Red Schoolhouse over 20 years ago. I helped him, and he's under attack now, but he's got his, you can graduate from his schools that teach you what real Christianity is about, what Jesus really said, what he was really about, and you're right about that. You know, Jesus was a master, and he warned you 2,000 years ago to beware the Jews who say they're Jews, but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan. Now, some of the things you said may not, the timelines may not be straight. The Khazarians, the country of Khazaria, I think they were attacked or converted to Judaism about 750 A.D.
Calvinism at the time. It was called Calvinism because from Torahism it went to Phariseeism and then to Talmudism when they wrote the Babylonian Talmud in Babylon during the 1st century A.D. Then it became Judaism in the 17th century. And then the history books, the Bible was a doctor as it has been. See, folks, according to me and according to many Gnostics, and the early Christians were Gnostics, we know that salvation is only possible through knowledge and the wherewithal to apply that knowledge, because the application of knowledge is the very definition of power. You have to apply it, and you have to know how to apply it, and you have to apply it well. You have to apply it in a plethora or a myriad of diverse ways. And the only way you're going to get that is by praying to the great goddess, the Holy Spirit, the divine feminine, Pistis Sophia, who is wisdom and is also Mother Earth. That's another problem, Clay. Everybody tries to control Mother Earth. Why not live harmoniously within Mother Earth?
Well, that's
instead of trying to destroy it, control it.
This next week, I'm going to be having my friend William Blair up, who works with the Native Americans, the indigenous Americans. You can call them Indians if you want, but they're really indigenous Americans, and they did live in harmony with the earth. We should have followed their direction, and I planned my Liberty Villages, which is still a good way. The veterans out there who were trained to camp out, were trained to live in tents, I think they are to build Liberty Villages based around Native American culture as a sustainable society. Grow your own food, generate your own power, put solar panels around the top of that teepee, and you really don't need much more than that. And then,
and folks, the only reason why some people call them American Indians or Indian is because Columbus allegedly, which he was not, was supposed to be looking for a trade route to India when he allegedly discovered America, which he did not. What he was really trying to do, he was under the employ of Ashkenazi Zionist Talmudic Jews who wanted slaves to build a slave trade through the Dutch East India Company, which they owned, and they did. They enslaved the black man. And if you doubt me, go to YouTube and watch Walter White 1968 article, his DVD, his video, you watch it for free, on who was responsible for the African slave trade. That's the fact. But these indigenous people of the Americas were a great race. And what made them great is that they had no fear. And all fears stem from one fear, the fear of death. If you fear death, they control you. But folks, and hear me out and hear me well, if you fear death, don't worry about it. Because, folks, you're dead already. Once the fear creeps in, all other fears are possible. You have been deceived, folks. Deceived into thinking the important things in this world of power and control over others. And if you don't have the innate ability to do that and cultivate it through training, you will have fear. And that fear is the beginning of failure. It is, in fact, death.
Well, now, let's talk about something else, too. Did you know that there is, it's possible to build nuclear power plants that are safe? And again, I probably lost the name of it. But
I wasn't aware of that, but as far as nuclear capabilities, folks, you got to wake up. I'm going to go back to 2003 and rate the nuclear powers. Most powerful, of course, was the United States and Russia, with China as a very close third, and the fourth largest producer of nuclear weapons, and the nation that had the fourth largest nuclear arsenal in the world in 2003 was racist, Marxist Israel, the rogue nation of fakers. And they had that nuclear arsenal in Dimona in the Negev desert. And the word Negev is just another Yiddish word for Satan. Like I said, folks, it's time to wake up. And that's what Clay and I are trying to do. We're trying to shake you, wave you,
okay,
and break the mental chains that bind you.
All right, now, there is a form of nuclear power that is safe. It's called thorium. Now, there's one drawback to thorium that the Zionists don't like, because they build these nuclear power plants the way they do now, using plutonium, so they can make nuclear weapons. Thorium, you can't. You can't make nuclear weapons. You can't make a nuclear bomb with thorium. So we've really got the answers here, and it's all based on weapons. So what good is building all these nuclear weapons and storing them over there in New Mexico at the air base there outside of Albuquerque under a mountain there? And Russia is building them and storing them too, and Israel is building them and storing them too, and complaining about Iran building them. This is, again, they're trying to set us up for war, because Iran hasn't attacked anybody. And your media is trying to portray Iran as the bad guys. They did the same thing with Russia to create the Cold War. They'd love to create another Cold War or a hot war with Russia and Iran, because Russia will stand behind Iran. The Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, again, I'm not giving them the dignity of being of the word that they stole and that they hide, or the people that they hide under. They want you using nuclear weapons. They want you buying that nuclear. I mean, if nothing else, you may not be able to exist totally on solar power. There may be some inconveniences, but the wind and the some of the coils and some of the electronics that people are working on I've had guests on that talk about that, got websites that talk about that, and there are sometime somebody will, when we get away from this control, they'll be able to produce magnetic weapons or magnetic generators that'll sit there in your garage and give you all the power that you need from now on. I believe that's really possible, but people have told me at Tesla conventions, why don't you have a magnetic generator here? Well, the government will come in and take it away from us. They'll throw us away. They'll arrest us. They'll put us in prison for having a magnetic generator. They don't want you to be independent, and this is the whole thing about the Native Americans, the indigenous Americans. They were too independent. That's why the buffalo were slaughtered. That was eliminating the food supply for the American Indians. It's pretty tangled web. It's a pretty tangled web. But we really outnumber these elitists. We outnumber these Zionists. And we got a matter of fact, Russell, you know where they're producing flying saucers and other forms of safe power? The guy's name is Kish. He's in Iran.
By the way, Iran hasn't attacked another nation since 1791 or 98. They're a very peaceful nation comprised of not Arabian people, but of Aryan people. Iran was formerly, in ancient times, called Persia. For those of you who have been hoodwinked, taken, bamboozled, and led astray by your misleaders, who mislead on a daily basis.
Okay, I'm not familiar. I'm not finding that. Let me see if I can find.
Many of the people think that Iran attacked Iraq in the 80s. That's not true. They defended themselves because Bush had instigated Saddam Hussein to attack Iran.
This story is just up on the U.S. is pushing Israel to stop assassinating, pushing Israel to stop assassinating Iranian scientists, Iranian nuclear scientists. And of course, the 29 U.S. scientists praise Iran nuclear deal, but they're trying to make you think that there's something wrong in that, and Israel is making veiled threats against Iran.
Well, they want Iran because underneath that Iran is the third largest oil reserve in the world.
Yes.
And they want to eliminate anything that they dream in their extreme paranoia would vie against their power. Israel controls the Middle East, and Israel also controls the United States. Google that too. I don't make up stories. I tell it like it is, bona fide fact.
I'm trying to find the name of the scientist. He's actually, I believe, let's see. Here's an Iranian scientist has invented a time machine. And let's see if we got Iran builds the world's first flying saucer. I don't think that's quite accurate. I think they've been around for a few thousand years. Iran has built one, and there's other things. The point is, whether they've got it or not, Iran has attacked no one. And if we're going after them, it's because of their oil. It's it's possibly a danger or a threat to Israel's expansion of its territory. They've already expanded, and you know what you really ought to be thinking about is how has Israel treated the Palestinians, the Palestinian children. My friend Allison Weir, who has been attacked for being on my show, published a list here of how many children Israel has killed, how many Palestinians Israel has killed, and how many Israeli children, the Palestinians have killed. We're talking about 9,000 to 30, something like that. The Palestinians aren't the terrorists here. And I had a Israeli soldier on that told me, you Americans are the next Palestinians. They are going to do this to you. What they're doing to the Palestinians, they intend to do to Americans. And look at this whole police reaction. The Israelis are training their police. And look at the police reaction to what happened to the bikers in Austin. Now, I've been a biker my whole life, and I can tell you, I've been from Daytona Beach to the New York to California, to the Love Ride in California. Bikers they're not at war with the police. We got along fine with the police. And yet they killed 9 people and arrested, how many? 170? Put them in jail for how long? Charged them with what? You say it can't happen here, it is happening here. Russell, do you have any comments on that? I mean, to me, this is really a... oh, there we go. Dr. D Charge is in the chat room. still talking about his crop circles, and that's pretty interesting that the crop circles are happening, are occurring. What does it mean? I don't know.
Very ambiguous. It's just another tactic for discombobulation of the mind.
Distraction. Here's a distraction. We ought to be concentrating. How do we solve this problem? How do we solve this attack on us? How do now Allison Weir? Let me talk about that for a second. I put one of her billboards up. She's put a billboard up. $10 million a day to Israel. We need that money here. We need that money here. And I agree. And Allison has been attacked for being on my show. Just for being on my show. Let me bring that up. This she talks about periodic bloodshed continues in the Middle East. The search for an equitable solution must come to the grips with the root cause of the conflict. The conventional wisdom is that if both sides are at fault, the Palestinians are irrational terrorists who have no point of view worth listening to. Our position, however, is that the Palestinians have a real grievance. Their homeland for over 1,000 years was taken without their consent, mostly by force, during the creation of the State of Israel, and all subsequent crimes on both sides inevitably follow this original injustice. This paper outlines the history of Palestine to show how this process occurred and what a moral solution to the region's problem should consist of. If you care about the people of the Middle East, Jewish and Arab, you owe it to yourself to read this account of the other side of the historical record. The standard Zionist position is that they showed up in Palestine in the late 19th century to reclaim their ancestral homeland. Jews bought and started building up the Jewish community there. They were met with increasing violent opposition from the Palestinian Arabs, presumably stemming from the Arabs' inherent anti-Semitism. The Zionists were then forced to defend themselves in one form or another. The same situation comes up today. The problem with this explanation is that it's simply not true. As the documentary evidence will show, what really happened was that the Zionist movement from the beginning looked forward to a practically complete dispossession of the indigenous Arab population so that Israel could be a wholly Jewish state, or as much as was possible. Land bought by the Jewish National Fund was held in the name of the Jewish people and could never be sold or even leased back to the Arabs, a situation which continues to the present. The Arab community, as it becomes increasingly aware of the Zionist intentions, strenuously opposed further Jewish immigration and land buying because it posed a real threat and imminent danger to the very existence of Arab society in Palestine. Because of this opposition, the entire Zionist project never could have been realized without the military backing of the British. The vast majority of the population of Palestine, by the way, had been Arabic since the 7th century AD, over 1,200 years. In short, Zionism was based on a faulty colonialist worldview that the rights of the indigenous inhabitants didn't matter. The Arab opposition to Zionism wasn't based on anti-Semitism, but rather on a totally reasonable fear of the dispossession of their people. And this is interesting. I'm not sure, I don't think this is Allison writing this, that they make one further point. Being Jewish ourselves, the position we present here is critical of Zionism, but is in no way anti-Semitic. We do not believe that the Jews acted any worse than any other group that might have acted in their situation. The Zionists, who were a distinct minority of the Jewish people until after World War II, had an understandable desire to establish a place where Jews could be the master of their own fate. Given the bleak history of Jewish oppression, especially as the danger to European Jewry crystallized in the late 1930s, and after that, the actions of the Zionists were propelled by real desperation. But so were the actions of the Arabs. This mythic land without people for a people without land was already home to 700,000 Palestinians in 1919. That's the root of the problem. Any comments on that, Russell? I mean, I see reflections.
No, not the.
I see reflections of what happened in America. We drove the Indians out, Trail of Tears.
What we did to the Indians is just abominable. Well, we didn't do it. We know who did it. The powers that be did it. And then they demonized them. Through TV with the cowboy and Indian shows, made them look bad, but they'll never talk about Wounded Knee and what happened at Wounded Knee, because Wounded Knee has happened all over indigenous American areas. They kill them and they imprison them in reservations, because reservations are nothing more than concentration camps. I would go to YouTube and listen to Redbone, one of the most underrated rock groups comprised of indigenous, so-called American Indians, their album, which is classic, and listen to the first song, which I believe is Wounded Knee. All their other songs are just spectacular. Don't miss it. In fact, at the very top of my Facebook timeline, I have a second post, I believe, because the first post is go to the show, we're live on the air now. But the second post is Come and Get Your Love by Redbone, in which I'm doing a very good work. So
that's really a good group. I listened to that.
You know, and they're underrated. And, you know, people don't really talk about Redbone. I do. And because I'm a big fan of the indigenous American, I know what really happened to them. And I know about their great connection to the Great Spirit, who is really Mother Earth or the Holy Spirit. They were a very spiritual people. They didn't buy into the religious malarkey that was forced upon them by the missionaries who worked for the Judeo-Christian church, which the Roman Catholic Church, which is nothing more than really a Jewish cult. It's not what Jesus taught.
You know, I think maybe since I've stumbled across this, and as I've told my audience here, this is the 21st century. I believe God's alive and well and uses the internet. And I just stumbled across this on Allison Weir's site, ifamericans.knew.org. she talks about the early history of the region. We're talking about 2,000 years, 1,800 years before Jesus showed up. The first Hebrews migrated there around 1800 BC. The land of Canaan was occupied by Canaanites between 3000 and 1100 BC. Canaanite civilization covered what is today Israel and the West Bank, Lebanon, much of Syria and Jordan. Those who remained in the Jerusalem hills after the Romans expelled the Jews in the 2nd century AD were popular farmers or vineyard growers, pagans and converts to Christianity, descendants of the Arabs, Persians, Samaritans, Greeks, and old Canaanite tribes. This by Marcia Kunstler and Joseph Albright in The Promised Land. The present-day Palestinians' ancestral heritage under that title, they say, but all of these different peoples who had come to Canaan were additions, sprigs grafted onto the parent tree, and that parent tree was Canaanite. The Arab invaders of the 7th century AD made Muslim converts of the natives, settled down as residents, and intermarried with them, with the result that all are now so completely Arabized that we cannot tell where the Canaanites leave off and the Arabs begin. As Eileen Beatty says, an Arab and Jew in the land of Canaan. So the Jewish kingdoms were only one of many periods of ancient Palestine, the extended kingdoms of David and Solomon, on which the Zionists based their territorial demand, endured for only about 73 years, then it fell apart. Even if we allow
Exactly.
even if we allow independent...
And Clay,
Go ahead.
I have to interject for a moment. Those people who settled in Canaan, the Canaanites, I believe were the old elfin races, according to my research, who settled in an area called Sidonia, which these people actually talk about their origins, the old ones who know the truth. They originated from the planet Maldek that was destroyed by an ice comet by the reptilians or the Archons, and it is now known as the asteroid belt. It lies between Mars and Jupiter. Folks, Clay just made a very, very important point. Even if these people were the original Israelites, I'm talking about the modern day Jew, if they were, which they are not, and that's a bona fide, unadulterated, uncontestable, irrevocable fact, even if they were, what right would they have to a land that they only dominated for 73 years?
Now,
it's a joke.
If we...
Hold on 1 second. For your own edification, folks, Israel today is really ancient Judea, and the West Bank is really ancient Israel. It was called, after the demise of ancient Israel, Samaria. And now it is called the West Bank. And that's why these fakers, these Ashkenazi Mongoloids, the cousins of the Chinese, Gog and Magog, who is which I'm not sure, want the West Bank. And this is why on a daily basis they go send in soldiers into the West Bank, into the land of Palestine, and murder, rape, and burn to the ground the homes and the bodies of innocent Arabian women and children. It is a Holocaust, folks. Not like the fake Holocaust that allegedly occurred during World War II, in which allegedly 6 million Ashkenazi Jews were killed when there was only 3.4 million before the war in Europe. Something's wrong with the math there. Something's fishy. Wake up, folks. Smell the gefilte fish.
All right. Let me follow up on that. Even if we allow independent...
Clay, you gotta hold on. I gotta grab a cup of coffee. Excuse me a minute.
Okay. Actually, I think I'm just following up on what he said. Even if we allow independence to the entire life of the ancient Jewish kingdoms, from David's conquest of Palestine in 1000 BC to the wiping out of Judea in 586 BC, we arrive at only a 414-year Jewish rule, says Eileen Beatty, Arab and Jew in the land of Canaan. And then they go ahead with more on Canaanite civilization. Recent archaeological digs have provided evidence that Jerusalem was a big and fortified city already in 1800 BC. Findings show that the sophisticated water system heretofore attributed to the conquering Israelites predated them by 8 centuries and was even more sophisticated than imagined. Dr. Ronnie Rich, who directed the excavation along with Eli Shulkin, said the entire system was built as a single complex by Canaanites in the Middle Bronze period around 1800 BC. That from the Jewish Bulletin, July 31st, 1998. So, how long has Palestine been a specifically Arab country? Palestine became a predominantly Arab and Islamic country by the end of the 7th century. Almost immediately thereafter, its boundaries and its characteristics, including its name in Arabic, Philistine, became known to the entire Islamic world as much for the fertility and beauty as for its original significance. In 1516, Palestine became a province of the Ottoman Empire, but this was made no less fertile, no less Arab or Islamic. 60% of the population was in agriculture. The balance was divided between townspeople and a relatively small nomadic group. All of these people believed themselves to belong in a land called Palestine, despite their feelings that they were also members of a large Arab nation. Despite the steady arrival in Palestine of Jewish colonists after 1882, it's important to realize that not until the few weeks immediately preceding the establishment of Israel in the spring of 1948 was there ever anything other than a huge Arab majority. For example, the Jewish population in 1931 was 174,606 against a total of 1,033,314, said Edward said in the question of Palestine. So how did the land ownership traditionally work in Palestine, and when did it change? The Ottoman Land Code of 1858 required the registration in the name of individual owners of agricultural land, most of which had never been registered and which had formerly been treated according to the traditional forms of land tenure in the hill areas of Palestine, generally mashra or communal usufruct. The new law meant for the first time a peasant could be deprived not of title to his land, which he had rarely had before, but rather to the right to live on it, cultivate it, and pass it on to his heirs, which had formerly been inalienable. Under the provisions of the 1858 law, communal rights of tenure were often ignored. Instead, members of the upper classes, adept at manipulating and circumventing the legal process, registered large areas of land as theirs. The peasants naturally considered the land to be theirs and often discovered they had ceased to be the legal owners only when the land was sold to Jewish settlers by an absentee landlord. Not only was the land being purchased, its Arab cultivators were being dispossessed and replaced by foreigners who had overt political objectives in Palestine, said Rashid Khalidi, blaming the victims, said in Hitchens. So was Arab opposition to the arrival of Zionists based on inherent anti-Semitism or a real danger to their community? The aim of the Jewish National Fund was to redeem the land of Palestine as the inalienable possession of the Jewish people. As early as 1891, Zionist leader Ahad Ham wrote that the Arabs understood very well what we were doing and what we were aiming at. Theodor Herzl, the founder of Zionism, stated, "We shall try to spirit the penniless Arab population across the border by procuring employment for it in transit countries while denied employment in our own country. Both the process of expropriation and the removal of the poor must be carried out discreetly and circumspectly." At various locations in northern Palestine, Arab farmers refused to move from the land the fund purchased from absentee owners, and the Turkish authority at the fund's request evicted them. The indigenous Jews of Palestine also reacted negatively to Zionism. They did not see the need for a Jewish state in Palestine and did not want to exacerbate their relations with the Arabs. John Quigley, Palestine and Israel, a challenge to justice. So, inherent anti-Semitism. Before the 20th century, most Jews in Palestine belonged to the old community that had settled more for religious than political reasons. There was little, if any, conflict between them and the Arab population. Tensions began after the first Zionist settlers arrived in the 1800s, when they purchased land from absentee Arab owners, leading to the dispossession of the peasants who had cultivated, said Don Perez in the Arab-Israeli dispute. During the Middle Ages, North Africa and Arab Middle East became places of refuge and a haven for the persecuted Jews of Spain and elsewhere in the Holy Land. They lived together in relative harmony, a harmony only disrupted when the Zionists began to claim that Palestine was the rightful possession of the Jewish people to the exclusion of Muslim and Christian inhabitants. Russell?
Yeah, it's basically, the whole thing, they have no right to this land. And the shame of it is that the United States allowed this to happen because the United States is under complete Zionist control. Now, it's something very interesting. I heard a very interesting story by a very good source who I'm not going to mention his name because he's an insider, and many of you will recognize the name, and I have his confidence, and I won't break it. If you tell me something, I'm not going to discuss it with anybody. Clay could vouch for me there, and so could my old co-host Tammy Wagner on Tammy, Texas. When I did shows with her on We Resistors, Sisters, and also on Tammy's channel. You have to understand, folks, that every time your misleader, and every one of your leaders are misleaders, speak, what they are uttering are nothing more. And let me clarify it because we've shown that there are good Jews. But what they are what cometh from the mouth of a politician, a religious televangelist, a mainstream media personality, or that you read in the newspapers, are written by the bad Jews and are nothing more than kosher bowel movements. you have to understand that these people have no right to the land of Palestine. And incidentally, the story I want to tell you happened in 1945, I believe, or was it 48? I believe 45 or 48, when Israel was founded and stolen from the Palestinians, that they needed one more UN vote to approve it. And they needed Harry Truman. Harry Truman was not a Zionist. He was against them. He spoke about them. But when it came to push and shove, they bought him. He received a suitcase with over $2 million in cash in it to cast his vote for Israel. And he was the straw that broke, I like to say, the camel, as well as the Arab on its back, because he voted for Israel. Harry Truman took the money, which proves he wasn't such a good guy. Like the rest of them, most men and women have their price. The most dangerous men in the world, and women in the world, are the men or women who can't be bought. Count me among them, because I'm well aware that the world may have, it may be hell, but hell has its nice neighborhoods. I choose to live in them. But anything I gain it in this world, I can't take it with me. So what profit would it be to me for me to gain it the whole world and to lose my soul? None whatsoever. And Harry Truman lost his soul. It cost him $2 million. Shame on him.
Yeah, Truman, just for your information, the surviving alien from Roswell was delivered to Truman by a father-in-law of mine, Colonel Laurie Conrad.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. They had killed all the truth tellers. James Forrestal.
Yeah, threw him out of the. They threw him out of the 13th floor of Bethesda Naval Hospital.
Well, he was on the security, head of the security, and he was the head of Majestic 12, and they threw him out. They put him in Bethesda Hospital and killed him there, said it was a suicide. They did the same thing to Douglas MacArthur because of his ranting against the Ashkenazi Jews, stating that we fought the wrong people. We should have never fought the Germans. They're a highly civilized, great race of people. And they also got rid of James McCarthy, who talked about the communist infiltration of Hollywood. Little did he know they were always communists, because there's no difference between Judaism and communism, according to Rabbi Stephen Weiss, the chief rabbi, the chief Zionist rabbi at the turn of the 20th century, who stated, some call it Marxism, we call it Judaism. Folks, it's wake-up time. I know, you know, there's a gal who I did shows with by the name of Summer Oreskovich. She posted something on my timeline not too long ago, which I repost, saying that, RJ, you're the man, keep up the good work. Keep telling the people what they don't want to hear, but in truth need to hear. And let me add, desperately so. You people have to know this. You can't be like an ostrich who sticks his head in the sand. You can't have the attitude that what you don't know don't hurt you, because it already has hurt you. It has enslaved you mentally. And soon, if you don't wake up, those mental chains will become physical chains. And you'll be nothing more than a worker bee.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. You know, we've kind of been, I've been doing this for 20 years, warning people about this. This is why I helped start the militia. When I watched them kill, you know, a whole church. That was a church, wasn't a compound. They called it a compound, and tried to make it in the newspapers, which are owned by the Ashkenazi Jews, tried to convince you that somehow they needed to go in and kill 17 little children to save them from a child molester. I don't buy into that. I don't believe that. So I started the militias, and they probably came after me because think of what happened at the Bundy Ranch. It was the militias, the people in the neighborhood. The militias are simply you and your neighbors getting together, working under the governor, working under the sheriff, working together to prevent injustices like Waco, like the Bundy Ranch. That frightened them. That makes them nervous because then they can't intimidate you. I don't like bullies and I don't like tyrants. And what I've tried to tell you people on this show is that if we work together some way, if you support me and I do the research and I publish the articles and I tell you the truth about what's going on, that we've really got a shot at overcoming this tyranny that they're establishing. They built the FEMA camps. Oh, it's for the illegal aliens. Then why are they still bringing them in? Why are they bringing them in by bus? You know, we have to look around this. We have to understand when they're trying to railroad us. And some of the guests that I have on, Carl Swinson, he's walked right into the city council meetings, the county meetings, and asked some really pointed questions. Why are you doing this? What about the comprehensive annual financial report? Where are you putting this money? Where's this money going? Why are you doing this? How are you doing this? He needs our support. He'll be on my show in a few days. Now, this is education, and when Waco happened, the first Waco, Russell, I started the militia and I started the Free American magazine because I saw how the press was just flat out lying to us. So I started a press that wouldn't lie to you. The Free American doesn't lie to you. I may get something wrong. I may get some wrong information, but I'll correct it as soon as possible if I do. And to me, that is probably the most important thing that we can do. And with the Free American, at least you can hand it off to somebody else, and you can still do that. I have probably allowed myself and the pressure against me to get me down because it hurt my income. I'm going to try to fix that. I'm going to try to fix that. Working on some ways to do that. I could use your help out there if you're listening to this.
Folks, we need the help. We need the donations. We don't get paid a dime for this. Not one dime. We do it because we feel it's our job to wake up the American people, but you folks have to do two things. We would appreciate a donation, be it $500, $100, $50, or even $5. Every little bit helps. And we also need you to speak up about what we're talking about and lose the fear. Grow some balls, some steel balls like Clay and I have. And if you want to stop this, you cannot do it with a bloody revolution. It is not possible. You only get yourself thrown into a FEMA camp or killed. The only way to do it is through complacent obsolescence. Imagine if everyone in the country didn't pay back taxes. Do you think the global elite could do anything about it? They couldn't do jack shit. 2, stop purchasing goods that are made in Israel. Learn the barcodes. Israel knows we're up to them. that we know, Israel knows that we know that they're up to no good, so they changed the barcodes. Know the Israeli barcodes and do not purchase from Jewish stores, businesses, or Judeo-Christian, because Judeo-Christians, as Clay has said many times, and I really like it, so I'll use it myself, are nothing more than satanic Christians. Because Judaism or Talmudism is Satanism. And unfortunately, like we tried to stress, there are those among the Jews out there who don't know this. They really don't know. And of course, they're the ones, and of course, there are also the ones, the majority that is, who fear the Zionist leaders. They know the Zionist leaders are in total control. And folks, if you doubt me or doubt Clay, go to YouTube and put in, not YouTube, go to Google and put in your search bar something that's put out by Dark Moon Productions.
Lasha Dark Moon. Lasha Dark Moon. Lasha.
Yes.
Lasha Dark Moon.
Dark Moon. Google America Vanquished, Now an Israeli Colony, parts 1 and 2. You don't need sound on your computer if you're having a problem with sound. It's an article, 2 large articles, and you'll know the facts. Facts are facts, folks. Obama gives Israel $70 billion a shot, and then all you hear about is him giving to Muslim countries. This is to confuse you and make you believe Barack Obama is a Muslim. He'll act like a Christian. I mean, he'll say he's a Christian. He'll act like a Muslim, but in truth, because his mother was a communist Jew by the name of Ann Dunham, and you could YouTube or Google that too, that makes Barack Obama a Jew, because that's how the Jewish so-called religion, the cult, teaches, that it's the mother, if whatever your mother is. So if his mother was a Catholic, he would be a Catholic. He wouldn't be Jewish. But he's Jewish. Simple as that. And if you read, if you also YouTube, go to YouTube and put in Obama's Jewish government. You will see Obama, everyone in Obama's government, his administration is entirely Jewish. No Muslims, no Christians. And if you wish, Google Jews and gun control, and you'll find out all gun control legislation designed to take away your guns and make you defenseless was instigated and passed by Jewish politicians or those that own them. You get it right from YouTube. Google YouTube the African slave trade, and YouTube communism is Jewish. You'll learn a great deal. And you'll learn about, you could even Google Jews and ritual murder. You could read YouTube the Holocaust hoax. You could read how, you could find a lot out. By the way, Clay mentioned something before that I want to augment on. Why do the Jewish Ashkenazi mongrels hate the Russian people so much? Well, I'm going to tell you. After the wars, the Napoleonic Wars of 1812, the Rothschild family came out with a solution to prevent war. Of course, it was a bogus solution. It was to form a League of Nations, like a modern-day UN. And every nation went along with it except the Tsar, who had power. And he broke.
Actually, there was two.
Previous plan.
The other
got even with them years later.
The other was the United States, and they gave us the Federal Reserve, and they murdered the Tsar and his family. And by the way, I've got up on my Facebook site, if you scroll a long ways down there, I've got the billboard that Allison Weir put up in Las Vegas. $10 million a day to Israel. Our money is needed in America. This is what the U.S. government, the U.S. military is sending to Israel. That is criminal. And I've got this article that I did talking about a show I did a few days ago. It was Friday, August 9th. It was the 70th anniversary of the second greatest mass murder in the history of the world. The first was Hiroshima with 70,000. The denial is necessary because otherwise it would reveal the criminal nature of the U.S. governments and their ongoing criminal prerogative to continue using the threat of nuclear weapons to maintain global hegemony. Nagasaki, the second atomic bombing of Japan by the United States on August 9, 1945, was in many ways an even bigger crime. The U.S. government had 3 days to assess the devastating human horror of the first bomb dropped on Hiroshima on the morning of August 6th. Hardly a building was left standing. 70,000 civilians were incinerated. Humans vaporized or turned into charred jelly, yet the American leaders went ahead with the second bombing of the western city of Nagasaki, in which another 40,000 people were annihilated. In total, over the following year, the death toll would reach 200,000 and many more, but our Jewish masters continued to belabor a hoax, pointing at 6 million Jews who never died in a gas chamber. They proved there was no gas chambers. And that brings me to my second point. During almost every show, I have a troll that goes by the name of Shumley, who attacks me and my guests, accuses us of being Jewish because he thinks that's the nastiest thing he can say to me. I call him Scumley and won't take his calls anymore. I suspect he is Jewish because this is the way they operate in every town hall meeting I've ever been in. They assume I hate them because I study history and know who they are and how they operate. Therefore, they use these same tricks, which they call anti-Semitism, to silence me or label me a conspiracy theorist to marginalize me. Now, I've reminded my readers and listeners that this is the 21st century. It's quite possible that God used the internet today. So, while I was considering Scumley and his tactics, yelling at me, calling me and my guest names, demanding I let him spew his venom on my audience, it dawned on me that he may have even been paid by the so-called Zionists to be as nasty as possible to make people hate Jews, kind of like being an actor in a false flag training exercise like Boston. Now, I've had a lot of friends and associates killed who have died under mysterious circumstances to fail to understand the nature and the seriousness of the war we were in. Oklahoma City and Waco were real. People died. It was Waco that motivated me to help start the militias, which then got me demonized by the ADL, a multi-million-dollar propaganda operation created to free a Jewish child molester and murderer by the name of Leo Frank. And actually, I believe Monday will be the 100th year anniversary of the hanging of Leo Frank for the murder of Mary Fagan. Now, Donald Trump was on my mind that day also. Here was a billionaire saying all the right things about America, our border issues, and more, but someone pointed out on my show that Trump supports Israel and his daughter was a Jew. Again, on my show, I've told you I don't care who your grandmother slept with. What matters is what you do today. Enter Naomi Wolf. Perhaps we were related. I remember an ancient Uncle Wolf who lived to be 100. My family was from Germany. Naomi is beautiful. Had I met her years ago, I might have done my damnedest to make her mine. She is a poet, singer, and songwriter. The piece she did on Vietnam is still on my site. She did say her parents or grandparents were in German concentration work camps. Mine weren't, but I was. Helped build a prison in Texas. She was speaking at a Liberty Forum of the Free State Project. She calls her talk, "The End of America, It's Here." She talks about the 10 steps dictators take to shut down liberty movements. She caught my attention when she mentioned militias. Even more of my attention was riveted when she talked about Guantanamo prison and the incarceration of anyone or everyone, journalists included. She points out she's a little British girl from Brooklyn who was brought up to believe guns were bad. After the study she made to do this talk, she now believes in their proper place in society, and she believes in the militia. The moral of this story is that there are bad people out there, and they're plotting against your freedom. They did it in your past, and if you're not vigilant, they will do it again. This is the point that Naomi makes, and it's what I want you to understand about me. I need your support. Got a ticket I can't pay because they raised the fine, so I can't pay it. Got no license to drive. If I can't drive, I can't speak, can't sell my books, my films, or magazines. And as I spoke, I talked about the Japanese. What about it, Russell?
The truth. In fact, as far as the Nagasaki, you know, we discussed this last week, but obviously for those of you who didn't hear the show, the United States had already beaten the Japanese, and they set off 2 devastating bombs in the cities of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Why did they do this when the war was already won? Well, I'll tell you why they did it. Number one, they wanted to send a message that would create the fear of God in you, or the fear, correctly, of death, that if you don't obey them, you could get nuked. And if you don't go along with the United States, who has the nuclear weapons, you will be destroyed. You will not live a good life if you live at all. Second reason was they had already tested it in the deserts of Nevada. They wanted to test it on live beings. So who was there to pick? Well, it was the right time. It was the end of the war. But the real reason here is, again, Nagasaki and Hiroshima were 2 cities comprised in the main of Japanese Christians. See, they got this thing for Christians. They hate Christians. In fact, in the Talmud, there is a piece where they literally say that Jesus, Mohammed, are now in a boiling cauldron of semen and will live there eternally. This is the kind of talk that really talk when they talk in private. Folks, they're subhumanoids in the main. I can't stress that enough. This is a fact. They say terrible, terrible things. And they do terrible, terrible things. And by the way, the word Gentile does not mean, and I've said this many times, it does not mean someone who is not Jewish like the Jew will tell you. Some of them don't even know the real meaning. But if you go to the Babylonian Talmud, their holy book, it says Gentile means man-beast. In other words, they consider us to be monsters. You there, Frank?
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. From the Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is by the way, Wikipedia is corrupted. And the Encyclopedia Britannica, this is very interesting, is actually owned by Freemasons. That's their encyclopedia. They put it out. Google it. And Freemasons at the very top of all the lodges, at the very head, the owners of these Freemasonic lodges are, in the main, Ashkenazi Jews. In fact, they all are. Who's kidding who? They run the lodges now.
The term Gentile, it says, is derived from Latin, used for contextual translation and not an original Hebrew or Greek word from the Bible. The original words goy and ethnos refer to peoples or nations and is applied to both Israelites and non-Israelites in the Bible. Just words here. We gotta, again, what do we do about it? How do we deal with this?
Well, I said it clearly, complacent obsolescence. A bloody revolution will not work. They have all the power. But you can make that power, you can nullify that power by not supporting it.
I have said that too. The communist-style revolution where you go out and kill everybody in the neighborhood is not the kind of revolution I want. And I don't even think we need a revolution because we've got the Constitution, we've got the Bill of Rights. You know, our founding fathers and our Constitution may have had flaws, and our founding fathers may have had some.
Hidden agenda.
Yes, they were Masons, and I got a friend that's a lawyer. He joined the Masons. I said, "Why are you doing that?" You know, he says, "What better way to know what they're doing than from within? You're on the outside. You don't know nothing. I want to be on the inside. I want to know what their plans are." And of course, the Masons under the 33rd degree don't really know any more than I know, do they?
No, they don't.
So, you know, if we work together just in our neighborhood, just in our towns, go to the city council meetings. What are we going to do? How are we going to do this? Why are you doing that? Why do you want to do that? Why are we? Where's our money going? What about the comprehensive financial report? What about this? What about this? Why don't we ask the questions? And if you see somebody from Jade Ham, you walk up, shake hands, and say, "Hey, guy, what's going on here? Why are you here? What do we hope to accomplish here? You are the police and the soldiers technically working for us, aren't they?"
Supposedly, but the reality is this, that our military, our soldiers do not fight for us. They fight for the military-industrial complex that is owned by Ashkenazi Jews. It's owned by the House of Rothschild, the Synagogue of Satan. If they fought for us, if they really fought for our freedom, they would be attacking Washington, D.C. Simple as that, cut and dry. You send your kids off to war, or off into the service, the chances of him going to war are very high, because the motto of the House of Rothschild is perennial wars for perennial profit. See, folks, the bankers loan money. The international Jewish bankers of the so-called Federal Reserve and the Bank of England, which was originally like the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and has no reserve, is all Jewish Ashkenazi owned. And what they do is they fund money to both sides in any conflict and make money off the interest. And then they sell them the armaments through their armament companies. So you have this perennial war, because perennial war, war is a very good machination, a very good theater, as they call it, to control the masses. Because when we go to war, most people join together and swallow the Jewish bowel movements that your leaders tell you, that we got to stick together and protect ourselves, because united we stand, divided we fall. I agree with the united we stand, divided we fall, but not for war. We have to unite. We have to stand. And we have to stop this unadulterated nonsense quick, because as I've said many times, a great storm is coming. And with it will bring death to many, and or enslavement on frozen winds. If they don't kill you and your children during a war, in the great storm that's coming, an American Holocaust, that Clay and I like to call it, they will be thrown in FEMA camps for the purposes of reorientation and education. And then they will be used in transgenetic experiments to alter the genes of the human being. You have to know these things, folks. You see, you think what we're talking about is far-fetched. Well, folks, little secrets are very hard to keep. Big secrets like this are easy to keep because they sound unbelievable, outlandish, impossible. But nothing is impossible. And the misleaders know this. Those who own you misleaders know it. They know that nothing is impossible when heart, mind, and power of will are set to purpose. You have to learn to do that. They are relentless. They are more relentless than the most hungry hounds in promoting their new world order, which I call the Jew world order, because A, the Jews run it, and it's anything but new. It's been around for 6,000 years, since the days of Nimrod, possibly even before. Man is corrupted by power. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, it said 9 rings were given to the race of men who desire above all else power. Power, what power? Power over others. You have to develop power over yourself and not worry about the others. Everything will fall into place. You can't go out and change the world. You have to change the man, and then the world, man or woman, and then the world will fall into place. Fear is not going to cut it. Prayer without action is not going to cut it. And violence is not going to cut it unless they are violent towards you. Then it's your God-given right to defend yourself against any institution, any government, violently if necessary. But you don't start the violence. You use it only as a defense. The best defense against a strong, the best defense is always, as Vince Lombardi said, it was the coach of the old Green Bay Packers. The greatest defense is a strong offense. But you don't start that way because we don't want blood. We start with complacent obsolescence, and we talk about what's going on, and we overtly or covertly, depending upon the situation, disobey the government. Henry David Thoreau stated, and you could Google it, that the path to liberty lies in civil disobedience, because the obedience must be slaves. Statism, or the concept of government, is, how should I put it, is slavery. There's no better word. Statism is slavery. You're capable of controlling yourselves. You don't need their choices. You have the ability to make your own choices, but you have to wake up and know this. You have to know that everything you've been told is a lie. And the best slave to own is the slave that believes he is free. They literally tell you, get a job, get married, pay taxes, obey your government, do what we tell you. Now, repeat after me, I am free. Who's kidding who? What kind of a fool would buy into such unadulterated bullshit? I'll tell you what kind of a fool. A politically correct, brainwashed, mind-controlled, Monsanto-eating, fluoride water drinking coward.
Now let me address something here. I just pulled up a book that I'm going to be talking about when I don't have a guest on. It's a Terrorism and the Illuminati. And it starts out that contrary to the myth being fabricated, Islam does not pose a threat to the West. Rather, Islamic terrorist organizations have been created to serve Western imperialistic objectives. These groups are being entwined with a Western power through a network of secret occult societies. This relationship dates back to the 6th century BC, when the birth of the Kabbalah, which is Jewish magic, in Babylon, a plot to seek world domination through the use of magic and deception. Herod the Great incepted a series of cooperative dynastic relationships. Their first conspiracy was to corrupt the emerging Christian movement, remember what I've told you, imposed upon the Roman Empire as Catholicism, with which they would struggle ever since for supremacy over Western civilization. During the Crusade, these dynastic families, associated with their counterparts in the East, members of the heretical Ismaili Muslims of Egypt, known as the Assassins. Templars were believed to have rescued a number of these Eastern mystics, brought them to Scotland, being the basis Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The legend also led to the formation of the Asiatic Brethren, founded by followers of the infamous Jewish false messiah, Zevi. The Asiatic Brethren then became the successors of the Illuminati and became involved in the development of the Egyptian Rite Masonry. With Napoleon's conquest of Egypt, Freemasons and his army reconnected with their brethren in Egypt, sparking a relationship that was pivotal to the development of the occult revival of the late 19th century. These associations were part of a grand strategy as outlined by Albert Pike, who originally devised a plot for 3 world wars, accumulating in a third against the Muslim world. However, because the Islamic world had been successfully dismantled, both through the instigations of the West and by their own corruption, they were incapable of mobilizing any kind of threat. It therefore had to be contrived. This was the agenda of the Oxford movement to spread Scottish Rite Masonry in the Middle East, headed by Lord Palmerston, Benjamin Disraeli, and Edward Bulwer Lytton, a leading occult figure, as head of the SRIA, or English Rosicrucians, which evolved directly from the Asiatic Brethren. The agent of this strategy was a notorious impostor by the name of Jamal Din Afghani, who became the founder of what is called the Salafi Reform Movement of Islam. According to K. Paul Johnson, it was Afghani, the head of the occult Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, or HB of L, who was responsible for teaching Helen Blavatsky her central doctrine. Helen Blavatsky, the famous medium and mystic, was the godmother of the New Age movement, whose books are considered the Bibles of Freemasonry. Numerous other leading occultists affiliated with the English Rosicrucians and the Egyptian Rite Freemasonry traveled to Egypt at the time, and on their return established branches of the HB of L, out of which emerged the Ordo Temple Orientis, the most notorious member of which was Aleister Crowley. The Nazis were the result of a merging of the OTO of Crowley and the Thule Gesellschaft of Germany. It's presumably this reason that Hitler, when he wished to create an arm of German intelligence in Egypt, contacted a leading Salafi Freemason named Hassan al-Banna. With the demise of the Nazis following World War II, control of the operation was transferred to the CIA. It was its eventual head, Alan Dulles, who spearheaded the move to hire ex-Nazis to train the terrorists. You know, here we go in an area. I mean, I studied Aleister Crowley. It's pretty interesting that the CIA, the Mossad, even the British MI6 are all involved with the occultist movement. And Albert Pike, of course, I've got one of his books over here in my trailer somewhere, and he does predict the 3 world wars. And he says Lucifer is who they worship. I don't believe that Lucifer is the bad guy here, but I do think that they are following Satan, and that Satan is involved in our religions too. What about all that? That's just a quick little brief. It's all linked up on my website in 2 or 3 places. So you can go to Terrorism and the Illuminati and expand on what I just shared with you. What about that, Russell?
It's a fact. It boils down to this, is a very simple thing. Everything that we have been taught that is of import, of any importance at all, is a bold-faced lie. The media that you call mainstream media, I call Zionist-controlled and owned mendacious media. The televangelists lie and promote Zionism and promote Israel and talk badly about Arabs. They demonize the Arabs. They've lost all their souls for the power of the shekel, for money under the table. The teachers, the mongrel dogs who teach the children in the schools and teach them things of importance are liars. You know, I can go back and remember going to Plainview High School before they told me to quit or get kicked out in 1963. And my science teacher telling me how wonderful the 21st century was going to be, how easy it's going to be for a man or woman to go about his business. Well, my teacher lied. Because what they've done is dumb you down with conveniences, with iPhones, with computers, with cell phones, with electronic devices. They track you, they map you, they know your every move. They really, really do. Facebook, give you an example, folks. Facebook, and I want you to YouTube this. Facebook is a bona fide CIA spy operation and the best of its kind. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg is a CIA agent, which you'll see in the video, who was decorated and awarded for his work with Facebook. He is also rumored to be a grandfather of one of the Rockefellers, perhaps David, but I won't attest to this. Yes, he's an Ashkenazi Jew. He's a CIA operative, a decorated one, and Facebook is a spy operation. They don't even need any other spy operations besides Facebook. That's why I say if you're not telling the whole truth and you're not afraid of telling the truth on Facebook like Clay and I am, and Clay's page is facebook.com/freeamerican69. Mine is facebook.com/Phoenix Speaks and the number 1. If you're not doing what we do, you might as well form a phony Facebook account, use a different IP address, put up different pictures of your children. By the way, I would never put pictures of my children on Facebook. It's preposterous. Why should the government know any more than it does already? And speaking about knowing, I've recently read something that was disturbing to me. Ever since 1982 in America, I believe that's the date. Again, I could be wrong. I don't like to commit myself to dates because I don't want to look foolish. I state unadulterated facts, so I can't confirm the date. But every child born in an American hospital is injected with a microchip to track you wherever you are. That chip not only tracks you, it controls you. It could control your emotions, as you saw in the movie, the last version of The Island of Dr. Moreau with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. He controlled the animals that he was turning into men. And these people consider you folks out there, and me and Clay, they consider all of us, if we're not Jewish, to be animals. Not all the Jews, again, and I stress this, but most of them. And definitively the global elite, those who served the House of Rothschild and those who were involved in politics. Yeah, Henry Ford called him the international Jew. I would suggest you get his book, The World's Foremost Problem. You get all 4 of them. In 1906, if you bought a Model T Ford, you got them for free. Today, you got to go to Amazon, but they're not too expensive. I have them. That's really all I have to say today. I think I've made my point very laconically, tersely, and right to the bone. If I struck a nerve, I I make no apologies.
I think you've
I'm
done a
not
good
here to
job.
mollycoddle American sheep.
I think you've done a good job. And folks, you can go
Thank
to freeamerican.com, make a donation there. You can go catch any of the last few shows, both on YouTube and on Facebook at Free American 69. We're going to keep doing this. I've got a plan or two. If you live in Texas, I've got some ways. I'm suggesting that I'm going to be looking into the Republic of Texas. First of all, I've got a map of the original republic in the top left-hand corner of my website. And two, the Republic of Texas motorcycle run is still going on, and love to put out a little advertising brochure to tell people where to go in Texas during this rally and this run. It's one of the most well-attended rallies out there. So I'm just going to be looking for the people there and see what we can put together. And meanwhile...
Clay, this was a great show today.
Yes, sir, what?
This was a great show today. We had no interruptions as we've been having for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Everything went as placidly as possible. I am well pleased, and I'm sure you are too. And more importantly, I think our Heavenly Father, the real God of the universe, the primal will to good, is very pleased with what we did today.
I hope so.
Folks,
hope so.
I would suggest that you go to my Facebook page. Again, Phoenix Speaks #1. Like it, comment on it, share the post, and do the same with Clay's page, which is Free American 69. The numbers. That's all I have to say. If I offended anybody, let me say very tersely, I don't give a frack, because the opinions of liars, poor parrots, and fools are of no interest to me. I'm on a mission. I'm like Jake and Elwood Blues. Clay and I are on a mission from God. And by the way, if you like music, whether it's rock and roll, rhythm and blues, doo-wop, disco, soul, you'll find many lip syncs that I've done on my page, and you'll love the music, I promise you.
All right.
And the Phoenix don't tell no tales.
God bless you, and thanks. See you next Friday.
All right, brother. Take care. Good night, folks. Have a great, wonderful weekend. God bless you all. Yeah, even you Jews. Take care.
See ya.